Welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and my guest on the podcast today is Greg Jenkins. Greg is my friend, and Greg is the worship director here at Covenant Church. We are getting into a wide-ranging conversation today on technology. Ultimately, we're talking about the digital life, internet, technology as a whole, and what are the delights of it? What are the blessings of it, the opportunities for us to find joy in it? And it's part one of two. Our next conversation will be about the dangers of technology. And so we're hoping to kind of book into those two things together and get a better, thoughtful view of how we fit into a world of technology. So I think you're going to enjoy it. Like I said, it is wide ranging, and we can't wait for you to dig in with us. And so without further ado, let's get into today's conversation. Welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and our guest today is Greg Jenkins. Greg is our worship director. More than that, he's my friend, and I've invited him on the podcast for a two-parter. So we got two different parts we're going to get into. Today's is really asking, what are the delights of modern technology? Technology is complicated. The digital world is complicated. The internet has pros and cons. All the things that go into it are sometimes pretty hard to parse out. And so what we thought we would do is sort of try to zoom out a little bit and talk about what are the positive things, these delights that we should be engaging in and grateful for. And then on the backside, we'll record a second podcast that's going to be all about the dangers. Like, what should we be watching out for? Where is this possibly not the best thing for us? So that's sort of our gimmick. I'm excited for the conversation. I think this could be fun. But here's the thing. Greg and I haven't told each other. Sometimes in a podcast behind the scenes, you give a little roadmap to the other one, and it's got all the points, and you know where the other one's going, so you can make sure you get there. We have no clue. So Greg is bringing three fresh hot takes straight out of the oven. I don't know what they are, and we're going to go back and forth and see what they are. Greg, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. What makes you qualified to talk about any of this? Tell us about you so people understand that you got a little role in technology and have an interesting and unique view.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. It's going to be fun. I'm a nerd would be the primary qualification that I have. I tell people that I grew up in a house where instead of having an autographed sports jersey on the wall, my dad had a Steve Jobs autographed computer chip on the wall, proudly displayed, which he's recently sent to auction, which is fun. That's the kind of upbringing I had, like early adopter vibes, tinkering in the garage, building stuff, breaking stuff. I grew up with the blessing of that sort of complete and utter nerdery. And now I am a professional nerd. I build websites. I work at a digital agency. I work remotely. I'm in my office right now. So the wonders of modern technology make a lot of my life possible, and the rhythms and the fuel for my family and our little economy within our family would be much different if those things didn't exist. So it's something I think about a lot, and I guess that makes me somewhat qualified to chat about it a little bit.
You're way more qualified than me, but I think I get to be the everyman. You can be somewhat of our expert. You know the insides and outs of some of this stuff, and I am the normie if you're the nerd. So hopefully this makes some sense. And like I said, the gimmick here is you brought three things and I brought three things. So why don't you start us and tell what's the first delight of modern technology that you want to surprise me with?
Cool. Let me look at my three. I wrote them down on a piece of paper. I'm going to start with maybe a softball, easy one, and go with connection. And so maybe the better way of articulating that is that technology of lots of sorts, but especially of the digital variety, brings far off things closer to us and decreases the negative effects of lack of proximity in the world. So, up until somewhat recently, you could literally only interact with things that were within arm's reach. That's slowly or quickly, depending on your time scale, changed. So like you can write letters or telegrams or telegraphs or et cetera, until now, of course, we can't imagine a world in which just every possible thing isn't connected. So connection is going to be my first delightful thing about technology. And yeah,
Okay. That's fun because I was going to ask you follow-up questions, but instead what I'm going to do is tell you what my first one is because we're one for one on really similar stuff. So I had first written something like connection, and then I said, no, it's not that. I'm calling it discovery. So the internet in particular is a discovery engine. We find stuff we would never have found. We encounter stuff we would never have encountered. But the connection part of that is we can, on the surface level at least, we feel less alone. You and I have a lot of common cultural interests or philosophical faith alignment. You and I in 1985 would never have known the other existed. It's possible that you and I, even if we didn't live 3 minutes from each other on the internet, might have connected and become somehow in relationship. And so there's a connection point there that's super interesting to me. The discovery part is the part I like better because I'm not going to dip into the dangers, but I I don't trust the connection online. Like it's the original connection is good, but then is there depth? Is that reality? But I do like the discovery part because I think um I guess my example is this. When we went on our honeymoon in 20 years ago, we went to Seattle and Discovery has done this thing of democratizing the word of mouth culture. So we had word of mouth culture is all we had. I mean, the internet existed, but nope, I wasn't on it. There was no social media. We went to this little place in Seattle called Matt's in the Market, and it was this like, and they had 4 tables and 3 seats at a bar, but it was locally really famous, and I only knew about it because my brother had been there 8 years, 6 years, 2 years previously, whatever, and said, "Hey, oh, you're going to Seattle? You should check this place out." Oh, and it's this incredible place, and they rewrite their menu by hand every day based on what's available on the market next door. And you have to walk up these secret stairs, and then you're in this little like club of we got one of the 4 tables on a Tuesday night. This is crazy. Well, today, in the best sense, I wouldn't have had to know somebody who had been there. I would have researched it, Googled it, whatever, and it would have told me, hey, don't forget to check out one of these cute little things. The challenge of that, obviously, is like, well, if everybody knows about it, that's not going to be some cute little thing anymore. But the discoverability of a new artist, I watch my kids learning all about new musicians they like or whatever. That to me is this wild blessing, delight, if we let it be. That discoverability is a whole wild thing. And I don't know, I mean, where are you at with that?
I think first we need to pause for 1 second and just acknowledge that our dangers and delights are going to be interwoven so hard. Like we could let that be like episode 2. Oh my gosh, can you believe that all the good things about technology also have downsides? I feel like we just need to say that now because we don't need to get into them, but I think if we don't, then every good thing we say is going to have this like caveat on a caveat. Well, like this is good, except it's actually bad.
That should have been the trick, though. We should have done the thing where whatever your 3 good things are, we should have named the exact same 3 things and be like, now these are bad. And they're going to overlap, but that's a good help. So when we acknowledge it, I'm not going to caveat. I'm just going to tell you also it's negative. We'll get more into that next time.
100%. Because I think a way of saying what's delightful about it is like, what is on offer? Like the offer there is that there's an amazing restaurant that there's no earthly way you could have known about, except there's people online that like to talk about that, make these things known. We stop there and go, that's cool. That's actually really cool. Like-minded people who maybe never would have found each other, finding each other, interesting, innovative ideas. You use the word democratization. I had that jotted down in a couple places of like, getting even just maybe philosophically one layer removed from specifically the internet, like technology and tools and progress in general tends to make something that's available to a small class or subset of people available to a wider group. That's like
it's the printing press, right? That's what we're doing. We're talking, this is anyone can have a book now, and used to be books were $1 billion. Now a lot of people have books, and so you're equating, and I'll let you make the point, but you're equating all the modern things that have, to your point, accelerated to a point where we almost don't even realize the rate of technological advancement. Those things are all downstream equivalents of printing presses, just continually, incrementally making things more available, more accessible.
right. And to put a finer point on it, every step we take as a civilization toward progress frees up more energy of people that used to be using a printing press to put each letter in a metal, you're right, and print that. Wait, now we're doing that in a much faster way, which means we have more time to think of more ways to do more. And then the compounding effect of that over centuries is, yeah, where we're at now. So I have a friend who lives in Utah. I see him once or twice a year. He's written a book. He sent me some doodles, and the words in the book, I used software that I didn't make to lay it out, Gutenberg style. But even more importantly, I shipped that off digitally to a robot who reads it, gives it a thumbs up, puts it on the world's largest bookstore so that I sent it to Amazon yesterday. And if you wanted to buy it today, it would be at your house on Saturday.
Yeah.
The book didn't exist 2 days ago. So that's cool. I mean, that's just kind of like crazy. Does that mean the writing is any good? It's a good book, but it doesn't mean just because everyone can write a book and everyone can buy the book that everyone writes doesn't mean that the books are any better. There's probably way more crap out there now. But
well, you're a music guy. Spotify is that in a sense. Like Spotify enables wild discovery. Anybody you have to get a recording contract, buy space. We were watching. We went to Jamaica last year. Oh, and we watched the Bob Marley, hagiography, really the movie. And I was explaining to the girls like why it was such a big deal for Bob Marley and the Wailers to get studio time. Like, is just wild how much they had to hope for, spend to get an hour and a half to record a couple things, to get a track, to be able to make it. Whereas today, you right there in that room with just the tools that you have in front of you could be on Spotify in 20 minutes with a song, and anybody in the world can find it. The problem, of course, as you're saying, is that doesn't make it good. And so the gatekeeping is gone, which is helpful so everybody can get in, but also the gatekeeping is gone so now anybody can get in.
right. I mean, even crazier example. I mean, you're saying like, here in my house with a computer that most people we know would own, like nothing, no special equipment. Um, it's crazy. The piano that the Beatles recorded, like Let It Be on, at Abbey Road Studio. Some super Beatles person's going to be like, they didn't record it there, whatever. There's like an old piano that's out of tune, whatever. They've recorded that piano physically with 1,000 mics pointed at every right place, and you can hear the pedal creaking, and you can buy a digital model of that piano, record it in your house with a little MIDI controller, which is a lot of words to say. Like, I don't have to get on a plane and spend $1 trillion to record at Abbey Road Studios. I can sort of get most of the way there at home, which is just crazy. That's discoverability. That maybe goes into my next one.
Bring it.
Which is convenience. It's sort of like technology. They're all interrelated, obviously. But if connection is about like removing the friction or the struggle of proximity, convenience just gives us extra abilities for free, right? So like superpowers or just like conveniences. So to go back to like the idea that in general technology pushes people from a certain luxury, let's say, it starts as available to no one, right? So think of an idea that like would have been science fiction, quote unquote, a few hundred years ago, like the idea that you could have a room in your house where you would use the facilities and everything would be removed from your house by miles, right? With the push of a button, everything's just gone. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. There was some sort of magic, right? And then there's like the outhouse, then there's like the toilet, then there's like actual sewers, and then it's like water treatment. You keep going until it's like, at first, this notion, this convenience, which all of us obviously take for granted, is like, starts as magic, not possible. And then some development of technology comes along that makes it within reach, maybe if you're the king, but not to anyone else. And then slowly the progression becomes it's more available to more people. And then actually on the tail of that, it becomes like a given, universal, and then even maybe outdated or like passe in like in some cases. Not with modern plumbing necessarily, but maybe that's a better, like a telegraph or something. Like at some point it's like, whoa. And now it's like, no.
Yeah.
There was a guy growing up, my family knew I was a kid. We'd like go over to their house, and he had walls and walls and walls of VHS tapes, and that's like a good example of like, at some point, an average person living in an average town having a library of every single movie. Like for me as a kid, I was like, this is unique. This is one crazy person that owns 1,000 movies, and then over time you're like, well, actually Netflix is the thing. And it's like, okay, now everyone gets it for like a couple bucks, So convenience would be my next one that's delightful about technology. It makes hard things easier, and it makes...
I run out of toothpaste that shows up on my doorstep 4 hours later, for somehow cheaper than I could have driven over somewhere to buy it, which is bananas. The fact that, I just keep thinking as I'm staring at you on a screen, we're having a conversation not in the same place with good audio and video quality that's getting seamlessly recorded through, very little effort. Producer Jake is going to do a little bit of work to make us prettier maybe, but like the tools are doing so much work these days, and it isn't wild to us at the moment. You were even saying like your previous house, you had a setup for Zoom calls where you had to kind of do your best to improve the quality of the things so you could have a better experience on Zoom. And now Zoom is good enough when you're a remote worker. You're like, it's good. Whereas 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago, none of this stuff exists. Or I like an 80s sci-fi movie where a video call was farcical. You'd gone, well, that's kind of dumb. No one's going to have that forever. And now
my 12-year-old has a watch that she can make video calls on, like it's Star Trek.
Right.
And that's not, it's interesting that that's true, but it's more interesting that that's not impressive or unique really at all in the world that we live in. Right? It's just like
ubiquity of convenience is it. Okay, my second one is frivolity. So this one was fun for me because I'm not the most fun. And so years ago, you're talking about VHS tapes. One year for Christmas, I got the Ken Burns baseball box set of VHS tapes, and it was 10 VHS tapes, and it was so many hours long. It was the PBS special all about baseball, which tells you how not fun I am. That as like a 13-year-old, I was so excited to get black and white footage of 1920s baseball players. But
I was gonna say, like, if I'm the nerd in this conversation and you're the normal one, but then you're doing that, I think that actually makes me really kind of scared. Because I think you're the nerd in most situations. But
anybody who knows us at all is quite aware where we both sit and is in no way surprised that there is not actually a normal person on this call. But onward. So in this, maybe it was the beginning. I don't remember where it was, but it was so profound to me. And Walt Whitman, the great poet Walt Whitman, is talking about walking through New York and seeing these men, and he's like, the men in their sundown perambulations of late, these men are playing a game of ball. They call it base. And it was like this touching, they got off the construction site, or they're off the steel girders building the skyscrapers, and for fun they go in a park and they've created some interesting game and they're playing it. And it's just like, it was this super romantic idea of what's now just this gross corporate, whatever. And I'm like, that's what I long for. That's why I like, that's why I want to like sports more than I currently, I want that. I want that frivolity of release. And in that same video, like, these things are seared into my brain because, again, I didn't have every movie on earth. So I watched these over and over. George Will, the political commentator, George Will said, life can't be all heart attacks and brain surgery. That's why he likes baseball. And I went, oh man, because I am so prone to heart attacks and brain surgery just being everything. And so frivolity that the internet offers us, as in a website that The Ringer, so The Ringer is sports culture, who knows what. The Ringer had a thing where they ranked every cold open from The Office, from like 175 down to number one. And each one had a paragraph about it. It was such a worthless waste of time.
The fire alarm is the best one, period. I mean,
And it was, well, I don't know. I think I've been 43. I didn't agree with many of the rankings, which is also part of the fun where I was like, this guy doesn't even like the show who's ranking them. I don't like him. I'm fighting with somebody I don't know in my head. Um, but it was fun and dumb to relive something I'd seen one paragraph at a time. I'm excited for what's next. And it was just frivolous. It was totally frivolous. There was no value in it other than it wasn't all heart attacks and brain surgery. And I think for me, I can be too quick to dismiss that. And when I was trying to go through this exercise, I went, actually, that's delightful that there are still places where I can go. It's like watching Seinfeld instead of watching cable news. You're like, listen, this is utter senseless nonsense, and sometimes we're okay with that. I imagine Jesus and the disciples probably they didn't play poker, but you imagine they had some fun, told some stories, played a game, whatever their version of that. I imagine they did that from time to time because it can't all be heavy. So I want to appreciate the internet, digital life, connectivity like this. I want to appreciate it because it actually adds a little bit of fun back to life that can get pretty heavy.
I like that. I kind of piggybacking on that, like in general, again, I keep going to like the high-minded philosophy of technology because when I think of maybe I'm like the McDonald's worker who never wants to eat McDonald's, right? Like I'm in technology all the time. So a lot of times when I'm waxing poetical about technology, it's like one step back from the actual like nuts and bolts of it into like what is technology? What are tools? Isn't it just a fancy word? Like, and I kind of land on this idea that like technology is just one way of describing is like it just makes work easier. Like, and then to take that even more abstract, it's like more output for the same input, or the same output for less input. Right? I don't have to do as much. We already talked about I made a book online. It's there. I don't have to like make it. I don't have to like bind it. I don't have to market it. Like whatever. Like less work to do as much or more stuff. Um, the funny thing about that is like for civilization, we can kind of decide what we're going to do with that, right? I think about this a lot. I just saw an article a couple days ago that I think Bill Gates or someone was saying like there's a 3 or 4 day work week ahead of us if we play our cards right. And the other school of thought is like, or we just keep working the same amount and we get even more done, right? And like you can also make that decision like individual, like technology, tools, these things all make us super capable. The reason I'm kind of connecting this to frivolity is like one thing that can do is create margin in our life for like not work, right? Like work with a capital W. Like okay, I can get twice as much done, so I'm gonna have some fun. Or I can get twice as much done, so I'm gonna like still work twice as much and get 4 times as much done. So I don't
Which
know.
has been what we do, right? We usually take. I mean, you can hear me processing out how much do I want to get into this. We can over index into anything. It's what we do best. So if I worked half as much, what would I actually get done becomes the question. Like, well, and then that's that guilt shame thing that happens in our culture of, um, if I have some time off, I almost like if you're one type of person, you feel guilty for having time off. And so you just work at your house or you're like, I'm going to manicure my yard. And that way I'm still diligent. And on the other end, it's like, um, I half do it at work because I'm looking at the office list when I'm supposed to be on the clock. And actually all of my life is frivolity. And the reason I already do work a 3-day work week. Some people are listening or be like, yeah, I kind of work a 3-day work week now. If you add up the amount of time I work when I'm supposed to be on the clock. And that's super interesting to me. And it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with where we're going, but it just is like, yeah, we've gotten so much more, to your point, efficient in our productivity. And people 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago said, hey, we're going to be able to work less. And it's almost like we're designed to work. And so finding balance or finding healthy rhythms in that is hard. But yeah, it hasn't happened yet.
So yeah, it's almost, another way to think of technology is like when stewarded well and when seen in like the correct light, and I guess in like a pure optimistic light. There are ways that introducing innovation and technology to get spiritual can lessen the felt effects of the fall, right? Like, so like medicine is a great thing for helping people who are in acute pain to not feel that pain. Now, it's not final, it's not ultimate, it doesn't actually, right? So there's eternity ahead of us where, in a sense, all of the things that technology tries to do will be accomplished. And technology, again, tries to bring nearness where there's distance, tries to bring ability where there's lack, or access where there's none, or plenty where there's scarcity, right? Like, these are things that technology purports to do and does in various ways, and we can choose to do them well. We can choose to suffer from more of the liabilities and risks that are right there interwoven with them, and I'm sure we'll get into that next time. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about work, the word work, and labor, and then the word toil. Like, there's something about our fallenness that introduced toil, but I'm not sure that work wouldn't have been part of the picture, right? Before the fall. Like, it seems pretty clear that like tending the garden and working and activity and productivity and creation, like those are part and parcel to like who God is. And does technology, and I'm just actually more posing the question, like, does something that technology, again, in its like purest form, hope to do is like turn that pure sort of like toil of the treadmill of just labor for labor's sake, ease some of that pain and turn it into something more like productive work that's life
Hmm.
giving?
Well, I can't answer that. So I'm glad you asked it semi-rhetorically because I got no clue. Uh, Adam Adam named the animals, right? That was a thing he got to do. That was work. And we still have people. I think of Adam naming the animals, and this is not a bit, but maybe it should be. I think of Adam naming the animals and the people naming new pharmaceuticals as essentially having the same jobs. They're just making words up for stuff that doesn't exist. And so zebra is as silly as Rinvoke. You just they are the same thing. But he was doing work. Somebody's doing that job right now, trying to figure out which V, X, and Z to put into the new pharmaceutical.
I think Adam's job was just a little easier because there wasn't as many words. Like, he had a lot of free real estate. You know what I mean? Like, just pick any letters. It's not anything yet. Like cat, that's 3 letters. That should be taken, but it's not. There's not enough words yet.
How
Right?
did he know to put a consonant and then a vowel like almost every time? Like this is all right. Take us before we say anything else. Take us to the third. What's your third delight that you got on your list there?
I have comfort, and I don't know how different comfort is than convenience. Although all of these things seem to overlap in this like convoluted Venn diagram of like things are easier, closer, better, whatever. I meant comfort sort of specifically maybe in like the alleviating suffering sort of way. Like, one of the, maybe, on the flip side of frivolity, sort of being a blessed uh, non-essential part of life. There's real ways that technology and connectedness like save lives, feed hungry people, and like help to deal with like real world actual problems, not problems of distance or entertainment, but problems of survival and
So not a toothpaste
flourishing.
at my doorstep, but an ambulance at my doorstep, or a helicopter flying someone from one space to another. Those things are all
or
of a
like
sudden like
a
life
or like
saving.
a crazy kidney donor match that the algorithm was not something you ever would have been able to do. Like this person in Guadalajara and this person in Anchorage, Alaska, like that's a perfect, like, no, that's just not ever going to happen in the world where we
Hmm.
can't instantly communicate, create a database, you know. And again, part of that is like earlier on in civilization, all of your technology is toward like just my family not being dead tomorrow. Like that's the thing. So it's all spears and weapons and like fire and cooking meat and like not to be too silly about it, but like all right, once we've done agriculture, like now we've bought ourselves like a little bit of time. We don't have to think about our next meal. We've got like a few meals stored up in a way that like we can kind of rely on. Okay, now we have like a little bit of free time. Like, and that's like sort of like you take that little microcosm and you go, okay, thousands of years of that. And you're like, all right, now we got a little bit of free time. What if we made an online database that like matched people's like genomes with their disease and matched, you know what I mean? So like, it's really wonderful if you think about that sort of progression of like these are all sort of just the same. you know Sometimes technologies come along that feel, I can't believe we're this many minutes into this and we haven't used the word AI yet. That's pretty great.
We
um
tried. I was like, we have over under in the office, and you no, yeah, AI.
what
It's a thing. So keep going, keep going.
it's the one in my lifetime, being a sort of digital native born in the 80s, like the internet sort of like was ish a thing when I was a kid. And I don't remember like the first website I ever saw. It's like it was there enough that it was like, okay, I can handle the fact that we're connecting over space. Like TV already exists, right? I know this actor isn't in my living room. So like incremental change, AI, LLMs in general, ChatGPT, like that's the first thing I've seen in my life where I'm like, that felt like a huge different step. It felt like we went from flying in planes to landing on the moon. Like, for a different generation, that might be the thing that's like, okay, same idea, but like this feels big. I say that because in the end, all of these technologies actually are just sort of incremental. And it's really cool to just like take a step all the way back and go, okay, start with Atom. Technology takes these little steps forward, and there are ways that technology is absolutely a blessing and a gift that increases human flourishing. I mean I was thinking like, um this is like a maybe an odd application, and it has less to do with some technology in terms of like what it can do, but more of like the things we're afforded in terms of a culture and what we can spend time doing. Is I was thinking about foster care. Like the idea that you have a community where there's enough flourishing, there's enough security about the future, there's enough food, there's enough that you can actually now pause and begin to say, okay, let's collectively create a system that does its best to track the welfare of the children. Like, and you go back 1,000 years ago and you go, if you were a kid and like there wasn't, you were just forgotten or whatever. Not to say that there aren't things that could be better, but like if you just, there's so many things I think about our modern civilization that are made possible sort of like latently by all of the accumulation of technology that has come before.
What do you think? It occurs to me as like Lucy is in the background. I can hear Lucy playing or doing something. She's talking to someone. Um, is it weird for you to think of the
You should
when
you
you
should
say
have her on
AI?
the podcast,
I mean,
Lucy,
she
sometime.
she might bust in any second because she has full sentences, so we can do it.
She'd be good.
Is your sense for her? Do you think about that? I mean, I know you think about things like the reason you're here, the reason we're friends is you're so thoughtful. But like you went from like you're saying the '80s were kind of a like we're doing things that got computers, and then there's a online forum that exists, or now there's a website, or now there's streaming, and that was your arc. Do you think about her arc, or like did our kids, especially these young, she's never going to know a world where there isn't an AI chatbot at the most base minimum level of technology. She's going to have that access, or you're going to have the access as you parent her. Do you think about where that is when she's 40? Or is that just sort of mind melting and let's never go there?
I mean, all of the above, yes. I mean, even you saying she's gonna, if we call ourselves digital natives, right? She's an AI native or whatever the people are saying. Like, so really practically speaking, she'll never live in a world where if she described a storybook with a few sentences, it couldn't just exist fully illustrated in a cohesive way that looks like something sort of that you would buy at a bookstore, right? So the idea that that was at one point not possible, and you had to, again, back to our, convenience, comfort, like you had to work hard to do that. Probably tiptoeing into some of the liability around technology in the sense of like, yeah, let's focus for now on the fact that that's actually pretty cool. Like, I drew a picture book for my middle daughter by hand when she was 3 years old, and it was really fun and took a lot of time. And I'd probably still rather do that than have a robot do it for me. But it is pretty crazy, to use the word democratization, that any dad with any level of art ability or anything could create a custom picture book for his daughter. Like, yeah, we can say that that's really cool. It's at least extremely unexpected and impressive. The thing that's funny though about when you mention Lucy is to say she'll always live in a world with a AI chatbot. It's sort of like me saying to you, you'll always live in a world with Laserdisc players, because that was the thing the day you were born, that was the coolest thing you could buy at Radio Shack or whatever. And you go, no, by the time I even have my first memory, that wasn't even a thing anymore. That's
I remember when my uncle had a Laserdisc player. So I don't know how old I was. I was maybe 10. And I remember it was The Hunt for the Red October. And that's the only time I've ever seen that movie. But I was like, I don't care about this. These people are in a submarine. But I'm watching it because the medium is so interesting that he brought out this vinyl record, except it was a
shiny.
piece of metal that was real shiny, and he put it into that giant slot right there. And now Sean Connery is just crushing life. And I just thought, this is the most wild thing ever. To your point, I never thought about it again, because
Right.
we've just leapt past that.
Which is what is meant when people say you're a blank native. When you're a native of a place, you don't even know the place exists, right? And to put it in like a really philosophical way, like Lucy is just learning that she's Lucy, like that she occupies her own self, and she'll point at herself and say Lucy now that she's almost, 2. But like when you're born into a thing, it's that thing that you don't notice. And so that's bizarre because the AI shift has been such a front and center thing for people our age. Like, whoa, that was a big jump in the ability for machines to like do meaningful work. And for her, that just won't ever have not been a thing. So to your point, what's that like 38 years from now? Like, it's not even possible to imagine, but my general like tool in my tool belt in terms of like predicting the future is to just take the numbers with which you can measure a thing and push them in the direction that makes people happy. And so maybe the easiest way would be like, okay, take the first smartphone, be like, the screen was small, let's make it big. Like, push that number in the right. Well, that's hard to do because you need a battery that's going to last X amount of hours. Okay, push the number of hours in the right direction from 8 to 12 to 24 to 30, whatever. This is all fueled by capitalism and like the fact that people will buy better stuff. But it's kind of borrowed from like a computing idea, Moore's Law, where it's like every X number of years, computers get X amount faster. And it's sort of like mathematically true. But you can take that and be like, take something that's not maybe digital and say like travel. Like Chris Columbus coming to America took, who knows? I haven't Googled it, but months, years, like a long time. And then it's like, how long does it take you to fly to Spain from the Detroit airport now? And so it's like, take the number of like how hard it is, how much work it is, how many people die while doing it, and like push those numbers in the right direction. Less people die. It takes less time. It costs less money. So yeah, when I think about what the world will be like in the future, you just kind of keep pushing those metrics uh, in the right direction. And heavy, I'm for people that are just listening, I'm doing heavy air quotes right now when I say the right direction. And I think this probably starts to betray the second episode, which is like is pushing all of those numbers in the right direction, optimizing for money, value, performance, whatever. Is that the ultimate like path to
Hmm.
flourishing? There are ways that going the wrong way with some of those metrics is actually really good for our like souls or our bodies or our families. So I think that's a little probably a taste or a preview of where this conversation can go next time.
Yeah, no, that's really good. We should state publicly so everybody knows that we heard it that you apparently are on a kind of nickname basis with Chris Columbus, and I liked that. That was really sweet. And then I got stuck. I know I was listening to you, and I think I heard what you said for a minute, but like the 30 seconds after you mentioned Detroit to Spain and how many people died, I was like, I wonder how many people have gotten scurvy on an airplane because it's not zero, but I want to know how that
Not
happened. Where
zero,
like,
but it's the number is plummeting. That's what I'm saying. It's going the right direction.
look, we had a friend who went Detroit to LA next to a pit bull on a Spirit flight, and I would imagine if you're gonna get scurvy, it's probably on one of those long Spirit flights. And I don't want to talk anymore about scurvy, but if you had that on your bingo card, do
What's
that.
the anti scurvy fruit? Isn't it
It's
oranges or
citrus.
lime?
Yeah, you got a lot of citrus because
That's probably where the orange juice on planes came from.
yeah, no, early days. If the secondhand smoke didn't kill you on the airplane, it was probably the scurvy. So I think that's true. We can ask some people in the church, but if they made it through the scurvy era of air traffic. My last one is interesting because you were kind of going there, and so again, we've kind of overlapped. But mine, this is weird. It's a little bit more esoteric, but I'm going to call it that. I love that technology is an honest mirror for us. And so, whether it's the things we create, tools and new stuff, devices, or technologies, AI, whatever, or if you look at for the average person who's like you and I, neither of us are social media people. But if you are a social media person, your algorithm, your even I mean for us, like the ads you and I see on a random website are tailored to you for the social media, the reel or TikTok or whatever people use. Um, it's such a mirror. It's an honest mirror. And it was even for me when I tried Instagram for 5 minutes because I was never on Instagram. I tried it. I was like, okay, let me see if this is a thing. And immediately I was like, I'm horrified when I hit the little magnifying glass what it's showing me. And I think it knows I'm a male in my 40s. And I think it knows that if it shows me a guy in swim trunks and a girl in a bikini, that whatever my swipe speed is, it's slower on the bikini than it is on the trunks. And so it's going to show me more of those things because it knows how to grab me. And I was like, well, I'm not on Instagram anymore because that felt dangerous. So I'm getting into that. You know, like you said, we're getting into danger now. But the honest mirror, I think, is helpful. It's a gift and a delight to me because it does show us who we are. For me as a pastor, I think often like a sociologist, archaeologist combination is like when people go like, what do you do? Or like, how do you look at the world? I don't know that it's unique to what anyone else does, but I really think of myself as a person who studies people because my job is to care and love people and point people to God. Like loving people and then speaking God into people's lives is my job. And I think it's all of our jobs, but you know, whatever. It is my vocation as well. Um, and the internet, digital life technology shows me what people want, shows me what people think about it, shows me what people are into. Then whatever the new television show that's streaming, oh, people love violence more than they would admit. People love sex more than they would admit. People are addicted to these things more than they would admit, and that's actually super helpful to me because I get an honest window into people, and if I'm not careful, I just think it's a window. And really, what I have to do in the hard work for each of us probably is I have to go, no, it's a mirror, and I can get off the internet mostly, which I think I try to do, and not really look in the mirror very often. Um, and yet, if I'm honest, it's no different than someone who is on TikTok. It's going to tell me what I'm into. And so the ads I'm seeing for a vintage Seinfeld T-shirt is it tells me, oh, it knows what I'm doing. It knows what I'm into. And if I'm getting more vintage Seinfeld T-shirt ads than I'm getting um, Bible commentary, what, pick your dumb sort of like stereotypical thing. Well, if you were really righteous, you'd get these ads. But it is telling me, yeah, your preference, maybe frivolity too much, or maybe you're leaking into some area you didn't know. And I think that for me has been a kind of a huge value personally, when I don't know that that's something we usually look at and say this is a delight. But for me, it is delightful to know um, what the internet is telling me about myself. And maybe the last thing I would say on Netflix, so that's a little bit more universal because I got that too. But my family has, 4 different accounts for 4 different people. So when my wife logs in and I log in to our profiles, the tiles change for each of us. And sometimes I just get on Netflix and I look at the different tiles for the same show for different people, because I'm an insane person, but also because I'm like, what does it say about what I'm into? And um, there will be subtle differences on. My wife will click on the murder mystery show if it's got, this icon on it, and I'll click on the murder mystery show if it has this type of person on it. And even that is like, if I really get into it and do the work, and this is the work, what does it say about who I am? What does it say about what I'm into? And then how do I submit that to some larger, I don't really have a spiritual construct, but how do I submit that to the larger sense of like, okay, Holy Spirit, what does this say about me, if anything? And sometimes it's nothing, but what does it say about me? And maybe there's a pathway that technology helps me to better, to sanctification, more Christ-likeness, because I'm able to see more clearly reflected just where my blind spots would otherwise be. Does that make any sense? And I just rambled incoherently for a while, or does that make sense?
I love it. I mean, it's definitely a deep cut in terms of a delight, in the
It's the
sense that,
B-sides. We're on the B-sides. If someone's still
yeah,
listening, there's no reason that anyone's listening. But if they are, this is where you get the B-sides.
yeah. I did a talk, like, I think like 2015, 2016, about spirituality and advertising, and it was before really even, it's even crazy to say, it was just before like the idea of like algorithms and that sort of advertising was even like in the popular conversation, um, which is kind of crazy. Seems like we should have known about it back then, but it's very front and center now. But at the time, I used that mirror language, not so much in terms of like the ad you see on the sidebar of a website, but just the ads that companies are willing to pay a bunch of money to create. So like in the world of web design, there's a thing we call like A/B testing, which would be like sort of what you're describing with Netflix, like way
Yeah, no,
oversimplify it, would be
totally.
like,
You put a Bud Light ad in front of somebody, and one has a frosty glass that has a condensation run down, and the other ad has women in bikinis, and then they test them and they go, which one of these gets more clicks or more eyeballs? I love that, and that's life. Like all of life is A/B testing. So I'm stealing your point, but totally continue.
I mean, it could be that the button that says buy now is blue instead of green, and they go, for whatever reason, blue makes people feel a little calmer about, what colors do banks use? Are there a lot of banks that are bright red? I'm trying to think, like Wells Fargo is kind of reddish, but like something about blue makes us feel secure. And we go, yeah, Chase Bank, it's blue. Blue's like safe. Like red's like, whoa, yellow, ooh. But
Outback
blue, yeah,
Steakhouse famously painted their ceilings like a deep purple because that makes you hungrier through research. Like,
exactly.
so I worked at Outback Steakhouse in the 90s, and you're like, yeah, why are all the ceilings purple? Well, it makes you hungrier. And they A/B tested
So,
that. They had 2, and they decided that worked.
so it's really easy to sort of hunt down the negative side of that, right? Where you're going like, most of what we consume is sort of mediated through think tanks who are slicing us up into demographics, giving us whatever thing is going to make it more likely that we click the button. But what I like about your take is like, okay, that's fine. But in real Kyle form, we're going to kick it right back in their face and be like, what you've actually done is, with this $1 billion, $1 trillion industry of advertising, given us a really clear picture of what people in general are like and what they want. Um, Not to get too far into it, I kind of put advertisement into like categories of security, story, and status. Like those are things people want. And at least at the time, you could pretty much watch a series of 4 or 5 commercials during an NFL game and go, that was a story commercial. People want to feel like their life matters. They have this deep, aching, sort of, this longing to feel like they're part of a bigger narrative. This commercial for Triscuits, in a weird way, by the way they use this handwritten font and the way the camera's not on a tripod, it's kind of handheld. It makes it feel like, oh, your life is an adventure and you matter, and also buy these crackers. You know what I mean? It's like silly, but like really dissecting it, the way that you're describing is like, yeah, the ads that are put in front of us are a really good picture of what we want, and a really good way to go, okay, it's not in Triscuits and it's not in Bud Light or whatever, but the fact that we want that actually isn't bad. So we long for security, and we're not going to find it with this particular investment firm but we are going to find it somewhere. And so to turn it on its head and go, the things that the internet, the things that technology sort of confronts me with, I can acknowledge are actually probably an accurate, maybe they're an imperfect answer to a pretty accurate picture of the type of things that I long for. And then what am I going to do with that?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Every created thing is a dull reflection of the thing we're actually created for, which is Christ and oneness with the Father. And so, right relationship is where we're aiming. And Triscuits, for a dull moment, become a thing that is satiating and satisfies me on some small level until I get the next one. The Bud Light satisfies me on some small level. The intimacy that is in this ad, or the safety in that ad, the bank that says wealth can be my security, like all those things. I think that's beautiful, and that's probably a really helpful way to. Will you say that? What were the S's that you had for the advertisements? Give me those S's again. Do you remember them?
So like story, I want my life to have meaning and feel like there's a legacy or like a thread beyond my own existence that's meaningful in a bigger picture or whatever.
Sure.
That's story. Status is like, I'm important. That's like, that's the Lexus commercial. That's the like the super exclusive credit card that anyone can get, but has black ink on it and looks like it weighs a lot of, like I'm different, I'm special, there's a status, there's like, I have clout or whatever. Feels like definitely a category. And then security, like it's going to be okay, right? Like I'm going to buy a product that is going to allay my fear. So there's a lot of insurance. I mean, you could do it a million different ways. You could even say,
Aflac.
You could take the same commercial and go, here's the car commercial for the hatchback that's a story, where it's like the guy in the back seat with the ukulele and like we're going on a road trip. That's like your story. Or you could be like, it's safety. It's like the new dad who's like, I need to have this hatchback because my baby's going to be safe and it's got 4-wheel drive and winter's coming. Or you could be like, no one else has this cool hybrid electric hatchback, so if you get it, you are different and interesting. So you could, and the reality is that company probably goes, yeah, we'll just do all those commercials. That's fine. We'll just get everyone.
Yeah.
But
in the age of unlimited internet and AI making everything easy, to your point, and maybe this is where we land, is A/B testing has become A, B, C, D, Z times 1,000 testing, and one of those is going to be served up. And so our awareness of that is helpful, and ultimately, maybe to your point, the idea that the more aware we are of what technology is doing in us, and ultimately what itch it's trying to scratch for us, is where we can land on going. Even the most delightful things are dull reflections of what we're actually yearning for and longing for. Was that fair?
yeah, and any like automated, think of any sort of machine learning AI automated bot of any kind, you know, integral to any of that making any sense is it having an assigned goal, right? You don't just be like, chatbot, like you exist. It's like, chatbot, your job is to help people find their blah, blah, blah. Like every optimization. So we're talking about Netflix, they're optimizing for what? Clicks, views, whatever. Same with ads, e-commerce website. They're going to go, oh, let's make the button blue. Okay, did orders go up? Like, we're measuring it against some number. So what takes us into the next conversation about the dangers of technology is we go, whatever whatever value we're optimizing for. So let's go back to the silly air travel, and just say, like, technology, not the internet, but just technology in general, whether it's a bicycle or a car or whatever, means I can get to where I'm going faster. So I've optimized the number of seconds from a lot to less. And the question then becomes, okay, is that always better? Are there times when something being actually worse is better? And by actually worse, I mean like measurably less efficient. To go back to some of mine, less connected. Is less connected ever better? Is less convenient ever the thing actually that we've been chasing? Is less comfortable ever the place where life is found? And that's, I think, a good way to set up what we'll talk about next time.
That's perfect. I'm not going to say another word about it because that's exactly, I think, where this heads. Thank you for making time for this today. Thanks in advance for coming back and rounding the conversation out next time. But if you're listening, you're watching, hopefully some of this is resonating in a way that is causing a thoughtfulness about technology and where you're at. Either way, I can't wait for you to come back and hear the other side of this. And thanks for being part of this conversation. Without people listening, watching, none of this matters. And so we're doing this because I think this has a value for the larger community. And so with that said, and with the next conversation teed up, we will see you next time. We'll talk to you next time on Covenant Conversations. Covenant Conversations is produced by Jake Trethaway and Robert McMahon. It's recorded at Covenant Church in the beautiful frozen swamp of Bowling Green, Ohio. For more information, visit bgcovenant.org.